Alright, hi. So I'm going to be going over the strategies for these certain champ selects. I'm going to go over four separate strategies, like I was explaining it to players, if they're playing this certain lineup. So first of all, I'm going to start on this left-hand side team with the Varus mid, Tahm Kench top, Nidalee jungle, and then Sivir Taric bottom. So I'll just start off with individual matchups. The Tahm Kench versus Gnar. Gnar actually has quite a big advantage in this because just based on the fact that he's ranged, he's going to be able to bully the Tahm. He also has a percent health on the W for Gnar. So, Tahm Kench building a lot of health, that'll be a little bit of a problem. Um, Going into the jungle, Nidalee is going to have a large advantage over Gragas in the early to mid game, power farming, that kind of thing. Um, Even with ganks, I'd say Nidalee's pre-6 ganks are much stronger than Gragas's, and the invade from Nidalee is much scarier than Gragas because there's no way Gragas is going to beat Nidalee in a 1v1. Um, Varus in against the Azir, Varus has a distinct advantage. You know, Azir has a really difficult time dealing with the poke and dealing with Varus's constant push, and um, farming at a tower for Azir can be difficult with the soldiers unless you're like really on point. So Varus is just going to be pressuring mid for pretty much the entire time. It's mostly just going to be important for um, the Varus to stay safe, poking from afar and not go for too many like really close trades, especially after Azir is 6, because once Azir is 6, there's going to be, potential for the Shurima shuffle on him since he has no escape, paired with a Gragas gank or a Braum gank or a Gnar teleport. Varus is only going to have the flash, maybe a cleanse to deal with that, and it's going to be pretty difficult. Um, for the bot lane, Sivir and Taric are matched up pretty closely with Ashe and Braum. I would actually say it's very even. Sivir just generally kind of pushes the entire time. Ashe pushes fairly well as well. So it'd probably depend on how the Braum plays, if he's blocking the boomerangs or not. But overall, this team on the left here is going to be pushing the bot side quite a bit, while Tahm Kench and Gnar kind of have a farm fest in top, and hopefully the Tahm Kench doesn't fall too far behind to the Gnar. It's going to be really imperative that Tahm gets 15 to 20 CS before backing. Hopefully, doesn't get bullied too hard, so that he can get a Ruby Crystal or something of that nature and teleport back to lane, so that he'll have some sort of pressure over the Gnar. Um, but getting into the macro aspect, so this team, the left-hand side team, is really going to want to set up Nidalee um, to give Nidalee the most success, right? So Sivir and Varus are both going to be pushing the bottom side quite a bit. Nidalee farms, the best of any jungler in the game. And her pre-6 ganks are great just based on the fact that she gets her ult at level 1 and has a gap closer, has, a lot of utility. So counter jungling and pressuring mid is going to be really easy for Nidalee in this game. One of the big things is, so like I said, Sivir and Varus are going to be pushing their lanes quite a bit. That gives, that gives each of those lanes pressure. So if both of them coordinate the push, the big aspect would be communicating with your jungler and both lanes, because you would both want to push the lane at the same time, so that mid and bot, especially Taric, would be able to roam into the jungle with Nidalee to possibly counter jungle or just screw around with Gragas. Just basically based on the fact that they push faster, just gives them the pressure on that bottom side, which means that Dragon is going to be one of the big objectives for this left-hand side to go for early in the game. The mid game is fairly even, but as you can see, this right-hand side with Ashe and Azir, they've got the late game pretty down, unless this left-hand side gets ahead, which is why I was saying that it's going to be really imperative that Nidalee gets rolling in this game, because, uh, this left-hand side team has got a bunch of poke, the Nidalee and the Varus have a lot of poke, but they've got the Braum to deal with it. And the fact of the matter is that Sivir and Varus are both very immobile, and it's against a Gragas, against an Ashe, against an Azir who has Shurima Shuffle, against a Gnar who can jump, flash, ult in, you know? So CC is going to be a really big problem. Playing the team fights, it's going to be really necessary for the Tahm Kench to be on point, you know, always standing next to Varus or Sivir, whoever is dealing the most damage at the time. It's probably going to be the Varus, because whoever the Gragas or the Gnar engages on, it's going to be up to Tahm Kench to save them, because there's only so much that they can do as these carries, right? So the team fights are going to be really contingent upon how Tahm Kench plays. Same with Taric with the invulnerability, that kind of stuff. But this team overall has awesome wave clear. But playing from behind would be really difficult because diving and all that sort of stuff with all the CC, this left-hand side team doesn't really have a lot of, they're not going to have a lot of luck with that. So moving on, so the second side, so if I was explaining it to this right hand side team, I would say, so the Ashe and Braum matchup is fairly strong, especially if they get pressure from Gragas, just based on the fact that after 6 they have 2 CC ults, whereas Taric and Sivir are fairly passive. They're going to be able to set up ganks really easily, and if they can somehow outpush the Sivir, they're going to be able to roam into this mid lane versus the Varus and, hit an Ashe arrow, hit a Braum Q, blow his flash. It's going to be really contingent upon basically making this Varus' life hell, because Varus is going to beat Azir if he's left alone. But Varus is super easy to just completely obliterate if the team plays well around it. And you have to keep in mind that you're going to have the late game, right? Ashe and Azir are 2 of the best carries to have in the late game. Azir is very mobile, has his own peel. You've got Braum and Gragas to act as a frontline for both of them, whereas all the other team has got is Tahm Kench, right? So even if you get behind, you're still going to have that late game potential. You're still going to have that, you're still going to have a lot of stuff that you'll be able to do, because this Nidalee is going to be giving Gragas a hard time. If Gragas is able to get off a few quality ganks on the Varus or a few quality ganks on the Tahm Kench and snowballs Azir or Gnar, then that would be great. I would say specifically you would want to focus around the top side, just based on the fact that that Gnar is going to be destroying Tahm Kench in a 1v1, right? So it's either going to command a lot of pressure from Nidalee just to even it out, or Gnar is just going to be able to dive Tahm Kench with Gragas, right? And one of the big things in this is that Sivir Taric have very little pressure in the bot lane, right? And Ashe Braum have an awesome amount of pressure if you start winning trades, because you've got the slows to follow up on damage, you've got the stun. It just pressures Sivir and Taric quite a bit. So if you can get the advantage in the bot lane, Ashe and Braum are going to be able to roam and do Gragas' job for them with the Varus. And if Gragas can focus on getting Tahm Kench even farther behind, then that's how you guys are going to win this game. But yeah, so going on to the second game. Let's see. Game 2. Okay, so I'll be focusing on this left-hand side first. So one of the strongest aspects that I can see is that they've got this global Shen taunt. So you guys are going to want to, basically what's going to be happening is, for each matchup, Shen versus Trundle, Shen is going to have a tough time versus Trundle in an actual 1v1, but he's going to be able to, farm under turret very easily. He's going to be able to get tanky enough that he won't actually die to Trundle in a 1v1. And Trundle Gragas doesn't really have much kill pressure on Shen unless they bring even more with them. So the Shen is going to be really safe. Janna Sivir bot lane is easily one of the safest lanes that you can possibly play, and it just perma pushes. You shield the Sivir, Sivir boomerang blades the entire wave, the wave dies, you just control the lane that way. There's not much kill pressure, but there is a lot of macro pressure, a lot of turret pressure that goes down onto this. The Elise in the jungle versus Gragas, Elise has the distinct advantage in the early game in her gank. She's got a lot of damage. She's got the Cocoon and the Repel to gap close, which is pretty effective. And then Vladimir in the mid lane versus Cassiopeia, I would actually give the matchup to Vladimir. It's fairly even, but Vlad's got a lot more sustain than Cassiopeia early game. Cassiopeia, before her first, second back, is really mana hungry, doesn't actually do a whole lot of damage until she stacks her passive up. So Vladimir is going to be the one bullying this lane. So when you take this into account, Vlad with his E is going to be pushing mid lane, Janna Sivir are going to be perma pushing bot lane, and the Shen is just going to be farming top. So this gives Elise a lot of free roam in the jungle. So she can either decide to go for early ganks. I would say the easiest gank actually would be for the Shen, since there's CC that you can pair up with it with the flash taunt. Ganking for bot lane would be pretty difficult just based on the fact that they've got a Braum to block stuff, and Janna Sivir doesn't set it up very well, and Vladimir has no CC to set it up very well either. But basically, the Elise is going to be put in a position where if Vlad is pushing and bot lane is pushing, there's going to be a lot of pressure around Dragon, a lot of pressure around bottom side jungle. So contesting the early blue buffs, like the 7-minute, 12-minute blue buffs, are going to be great because you really want to keep that blue buff off of Cassiopeia. If you can keep that blue off of Cassiopeia, if you can keep pushing those waves into them and keeping the pressure up, she's going to have a really tough time stacking that passive, stacking her tier, everything. The big thing as well, the huge thing actually, is that with this bottom side pressure, you've also got the Shen ult, right? So any plays that you make on that blue buff, any plays that you make on that bottom side jungle, counter jungling, taking blue buff, ganking bottom, you've got the Shen ult and the TP. So you're always going to have the pressure on the bottom side, and you need to make sure that you take advantage of that. One big thing that the Elise can do as well, that is actually one of my favorite strategies, is if Elise ganks top for the Shen and blows either flash, even if he just gets him low, you don't even need to get a kill, right? If he teleports back to lane, you've got Shen with an ult and teleport advantage, right? So he could basically go all the way across the map without worrying a single bit because he could just teleport back to lane, And that opens up massive opportunities, like for, 4-man dives on bottom lane, for, like I said earlier, stealing blue buffs, all around. So Elise has a lot of options here, and my suggestion would be pressuring the Trundle around level 4, 5, 6 to blow his teleport back to lane, and then opening up your Shen to be able to make plays. And then after you blow that Trundle teleport, the Elise backs and heads straight to bottom lane. Sivir pushes, Vladimir pushes, you make the play onto their blue buff around 7 minutes, 12 minutes, play onto the Dragon, 4-man dive bottom. You have so many options available, and the Trundle is just going to be helpless because Shen's going to be able to ult bottom, and then Trundle won't even get the top tower because he'll be able to TP back, So it's very contingent upon how the jungler plays. The basic strategy would be, like I said, gank top early, blow the teleport, back, go pressure bottom side as they push, and make plays on the blue buffs to prevent Cassiopeia from being able to stack. And later in the game, you should just be able to run them down, with Sivir, Janna, depending on what dragons you get, if you get any Cloud Drakes, the Shen, Flash, Taunt. Vladimir is just a strong team fighter all around. Getting that early advantage, getting Cassiopeia behind, is going to be the key to dominating this game. Alright, so for this fourth scenario, if you guys were playing this team, I would say the main thing is you guys are playing for mid to late game, right? There's not a whole lot of early game pressure. Gragas can make things happen with nice ganks, but usually it'll be after 6, right? So Vladimir is super safe to play against. Well, here, let me go over the 1v1 matchup. So Trundle versus Shen. Trundle wins the 1v1, but it's going to be difficult for Trundle to kill Shen. It'll just be, a a lot more pressure, a lot more pushing. You'll have to be careful about getting ganked by the Elise early, just because the Shen has CC, Elise has CC, and you'll be the one pressuring. So it's just going to be up to you to make sure that you play that well. Um, for Cassiopeia, it's a farm lane for both sides, right? So both Vladimir and Cassiopeia scale very well. Cass actually has a more difficult time before her passive starts stacking, before the tier starts stacking. So playing more passive, just farming it out, is going to be really beneficial for Cassiopeia, staying out of harm's way from Elise. The Gragas, as I was saying earlier, I would honestly needs to pressure mid lane. This game you're probably not going to be out ganking the Elise, but you can ward for Cassiopeia. You can just make sure you basically have to ensure her survival, right? So later in the game, you, Braum, and Trundle are going to be the front line for Cassiopeia and Jhin, which is a massive back line, right? If you can get them going. So the thing is, you need to keep in mind that you may fall behind at some point in this game, but to keep in mind that Cassiopeia and Jhin are both going to scale very well, right? So don't lose heart if you do get behind to a couple of Elise ganks or to a Shen ult dive, something like that. They have more global pressure, but in the late game team fights, you guys are going to be able to, put up a real fight with the Cassiopeia damage. This bot lane, Jhin and Braum versus Janus Sivir. Janus Sivir is one of the safest lanes, and Jhin is a little bit left out in the open against an Elise or a Shen gank, a teleport gank or something of that sort. So playing safe, honestly, is you just gotta play safe all around, because the other team is going to be pushing in bottom and mid lane, and the bot lane is going to be very susceptible to being 4-man dove with that Shen ult, even 5-man dove if the Vladimir takes TP. So the real key here is, putting up as much of a fight as you can without dying, without, giving it all away. Because you need to make it to that 30-minute marker. You need to make it to that 35-minute marker where Cassiopeia is just going to be able to, flash ult or just 1v5 the entire team with such a massive front line. So basically, in the early game, I kind of already went over that. The mid game, Trundle is going to be split pushing quite a bit, and the big thing is that you're going to have to capitalize on the fact that Shen is probably going to be roaming with his ult, and you want to be able to get as much damage as possible. So a nice strategy that you guys could do is you can almost bait out the Shen ult on the bottom lane. You always have to be careful about wards behind you, right? So that you don't just get teleported on. But you can basically bait out the Shen ult so that Trundle can just continue pushing top and then either clear the wave with Cassiopeia and Jhin or something of that nature. But the Shen global pressure is going to be something that you need to take into account, and you're going to need to be able to deal with, or else you'll be having a lot of trouble. So the late game, though, Trundle is going to be able to steal all the stats from Shen, right? So Trundle's just going to be massive, takes no damage. Their team, this left-hand side team, does not have a lot of burst. Elise falls off. Sivir is fairly strong. Vlad is fairly strong late game. But Vlad is kind of a tankier mid laner now. Trundle is just going to be absolutely unkillable. A tanky Gragas is going to be, a great front line. Braum is going to be able to block a lot of Sivir's boomerangs and prevent those nasty crits from getting into the team. While Jhin and Cassiopeia both provide such a strong backline that you basically just have to kite back to the point where um, to the point where Cassiopeia can just like get going, because their team cannot fight into you. They cannot just run into you with Sivir, or else they risk getting Gragas ulted back. They risk getting Cassiopeia ulted straight in the face. They risk getting turned on by the Trundle. There's a lot of different scenarios, but the big thing is just you need to make sure that you're going to be able to get to late game, because otherwise, Cassiopeia is not that strong early game compared to Vlad, and the Shen Elise combo is going to be putting down a lot of early to mid game pressure. So dealing with that and not getting too far behind is going to be your key to success. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully that was satisfactory of what each team comp should do. It's just kind of a general overview. So, yep.